So thank you for coming along today, everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about UCAS, about the UCAS process, about how all that works, and I'm going to show you a UCAS form live for most of this webinar. Just to introduce myself, my name's Laura. I work in the sixth form at Acland Burghley. I'm the Pathways and Progress Leader. Also here today is Anna Rimington, who is the Director of Key Stage 5, and hopefully Ron, who is the head of Year 12 and 13, will be joining us as well at some point. So if you have anything that you want to ask Anna or Ron, then you can do so, or of course you can ask me as well. How this is going to work then, I am going to talk for most of this webinar. As I say, I'm going to outline the UCAS process in general. I'm going to talk about the UCAS form, about deadlines, about all those kinds of things. If you have any questions at all, please do type them in the chat box, which you can find in Zoom. Anna will be keeping an eye on these throughout the webinar, and then at the end we will answer any questions that you've got. We will be, as I say, we will leave all the questions to the end and then answer them at the end, but if something comes up as you think of it, please do say so. I think that's all I've got as an introduction. Anna, do you want to say hello?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. So I'm really delighted. There's so many people. There's 81 participants. And I'm just aware that some of you, I know, are parents from other schools, not at Acland Burghley School. So I'm the Director of Learning, Head of Sixth at Acland Burghley. Just a kind of reminder, this webinar is just about the UCAS process for Year 12s, and some stuff will be specific to Acland Burghley, but actually most of it will just be about the process that goes across the whole piece anyway. If you do have questions, the questions today, if you put them in the chat, and there'll be questions related to UCAS and what Laura is going to talk to you about. Of course, as ever, if you've got any other questions that you want to ask me and Ron, I know Ron Stokes, Head of Year 12, is just there. Give us a wave, Ron. And if you want to email us about anything else that's different and outside the UCAS process, of course, please contact us via our usual email addresses. But this webinar is just about the UCAS process. Laura, back to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so what we're going to talk to you about this afternoon, we're going to give you an overview of UCAS in general. I'm going to talk to you about deadlines and the kind of practical things around that with UCAS. As I say, I'm going to show you the UCAS form, how to log in to UCAS Apply, and what the different sections are that students have to fill in. We're going to talk to you briefly about the personal statement, about interviews and portfolios and other things that students might have to do as part of their application process. A little bit about offers and accepting, and then at the end, just a bit about what we call early entrants, so things like medicine and Oxbridge and applications that fall outside the normal UCAS timeline. And we'll do that right at the very end, and then there'll be some chance for some, if there's anything we haven't answered, then we will look at your questions there at the end. So before we get going, if anyone isn't sure what UCAS is, just to start with, and lots of people won't have actually used UCAS, so there's no reason that you would. It's the hub where all undergraduate courses in the UK, or the vast majority of undergraduate courses in the UK, are applied for. So if you are wanting to go to university, certainly to do your first degree, then you will generally go through UCAS. It means that you don't have to apply separately to lots of different universities. You just do one application form, one personal statement. It all goes into UCAS centrally, and then that is sent off to up to 5 courses or 5 universities of your choice. That is the maximum number of courses you can apply for through UCAS, or per year it is 5. They don't have to be at 5 different universities. You could, if there was one place that you were absolutely certain that you loved and you wanted to go, you could apply for 5 courses at the same place. But most students do choose to spread them out across different universities. And this is for universities in the United Kingdom. So England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Universities elsewhere in the EU or elsewhere in the world are applied for in a different way. They don't go via UCAS. So if your children are thinking of applying for somewhere that is outside of the UK, please do speak to me or speak to someone at their school, the head of year, because the application process and the timelines are different. Just so you're aware. So speaking of deadlines, just to start with, The main UCAS deadline is the 15th of January. So please do take a note of this. For the vast majority of courses, nearly all undergraduate courses, it's the 15th of January, 2021. So there is a little bit of time to apply. What we call the early entry courses, and I'll come back to these later, but these are all courses at Oxford or Cambridge, or any courses that are medicine, dentistry, or veterinary. The deadline for those is the 15th of October. So if a student is applying for those, they need to be moving quite quickly. We are currently reaching out to all those students. We're having conversations with them, and we are going to work with those students in a separate group to make sure that they can apply on time. So please don't worry if one of your children falls into that category, but please do get them to let us know if we haven't contacted them already. UCAS costs £25. It's a flat fee, and that allows you to apply for up to 5 courses. You don't have to apply for 5. We recommend that you use all 5. It's all done online as well. If you've been to university, but you went to university quite a long time ago, like I did, you may have filled in your UCAS form by hand or tried to feed it into a printer or some other sort of archaic way of doing it. That doesn't happen anymore. It's all done online. And just again, this sometimes reassures students as well that the UCAS form is sent to each university separately. So the unis can't see all the other courses that they've applied for, so they don't have to worry. Sometimes you hear stories about you're on the internet or whatever saying, oh, well, if you apply to this place, you can't apply to this place. It's all a load of nonsense. The unis only see the application that goes to them. It goes straight to that department, and that is it. So they don't have to worry about combinations of places they're applying to or which order they come on the UCAS form. It's only the one uni that sees the application. So let's have a look and see what it looks like. So hopefully you can see the UCAS screen now. It says undergraduates. You are looking at 2021 entry. Students should be applying for 2021 entry. Even if they are planning on taking a gap year or deferring a year, they still need to put 2021 entry at this stage. And for the actual application form, they need to click apply. The UCAS hub is something different. It's really worth signing up for. That's a place where if they've used Unifrog, it's a bit like Unifrog. They can keep all their courses in there and they can compare things, and it has a diary and all different kinds of functions. But the hub is not the application form. And signing up for the hub doesn't mean you've done an application. You need to actually go into apply. So if you haven't used it before, you'll click on register. And there are various sort of notices that it tells you at the beginning, just warnings like if you apply more than once, then it will charge you twice, things like that. Check through and click on next. And then, of course, like anything online, there are terms and conditions. I'm not going to read them to you now. You can read them at your own leisure. We'll click on next. And then we do the sign up. So title, gender, there is only male and female available at the moment, unfortunately. So one of those has to be selected. And the names given have to be the names that are on some kind of official documentation. So a birth certificate or a passport or something similar. So I'm obviously going to fill in a load of nonsense here, but your children should fill in their real details. Oh, it doesn't like that. There we go. UK. And then you'll put in your address. Let's see if it will let me do this. If it won't, then I'll go through to the form that I've already filled in. Here we go. Anything that has a little red asterisk, you need to fill in. You have to give that information. It's really important that when they give a email address, that it is a real email address that they can actually contact you on, because UCAS send a lot of emails. And if they can't get hold of the student, it does cause issues, because there's lots of things that they don't hear about. So they really need to make sure that their email address is up to date. And if they change it, they log back in and change it. So here we go. I'm not going to fill all this bit in. I'm going to switch on to a screen that I've already filled in, but they need to choose a password. It's quite a complicated one. And they will also need four now. So it used to be 3 security questions that they will remember at a later date. Please ask them to take a photo of this or write it down, because they are really easy to forget, and UCAS can be a bit of a pain if you need to try and reset your password or log back in. So the more information that they can remember, the better. As they go through, it will also ask them to choose the form that they are in, which will be a drop-down menu. So they'll need to pick their form tutor, and it will ask them for a buzzword, which is Burghley 2020 with a capital B. So once they've done all that and they've registered, this is what their front page will look like. There we go. This is what their front page will look like. It always has these little videos here to help them out. And down the side are all the different sections that they have to fill in their UCAS form. One thing they should also remember is it will give them a UCAS ID. Again, it's a good idea to write all of this information down, their ID, their username, all that kind of stuff. UCAS unfortunately does have a lot of this kind of gatekeeping in terms of security questions and whatever, but it is to make sure their accounts are secure. Please get them to write all this down. So the sections here are quite self-explanatory. I'm just going to go through some of the key details and just give you a sense of how long the form is. They do need to set aside a couple of hours in order to do it properly. So the information you put in at the beginning will all just pull through, just their personal details and home address and things like that. Again, anything with a red asterisk needs to be filled in, and anything you're not sure about, if you click on the little question mark next to it, then it will tell you some information. So if there's something that you're not sure how to answer it, then it will click on the question mark, it will tell you more. Anything that says see list next to it will give you a list that you can click on and populate it. Some of the things that are a bit more confusing here: area of permanent residence is the borough that you live in, or if you live outside of London, it is the county that you live in. You don't need to fill in things like reference numbers and passport details. And possibly the most important section in this whole personal details section is this, which is student support, because this is the bit where you tell them that you would like a student loan, please. For most people, nearly everyone, the fee code will be O2. That means that you would like a student loan to cover your fees and a maintenance loan you sort out later. But this is telling UCAS that you do want a student loan. Given that fees are now £9,500 a year, this is the option that most people need. And again, for student support arrangements, it is the borough that you live in. Once you've filled in all these details, you click section completed at the bottom, and please always remember to save. This is another important section as well under disabilities and special needs. Sometimes universities are able to give grants or special consideration to students who have registered disabilities or have special needs. So if that applies to the student, please ask them to select the one that is the most relevant, that matches the most closely, and to give some details here. There isn't very much space to give any details here, so they don't have to go into give lots of information at this stage, but that will let the university know that that student is perhaps entitled to either some equipment or extra time or an extra grant or something else that could be useful to them. Once personal details has been filled in, this box will appear. So when you first look at it, you won't see this additional information box. It only appears when you actually start to fill in the personal details. Most of this you don't have to do if you don't want to, because it's things to do with equality monitoring, to do with sexuality and religion. The only one you have to fill in is ethnic origin, that's all. National identity as well. This section is sometimes confusing. Activities in preparation for higher education. If the student has done any summer schools, I know there aren't many on this year, but if they do anything that classes as a summer school, they can fill it in here. It's not for open days and things like that. If they're really not sure, they can just leave it blank because it's actually not hugely important, or they can ask me, or they can ask a head of year or someone at their school if it's appropriate to fill in there. But again, a really important section at the bottom here that I really want to draw your attention to is this part, which I'm just highlighting in blue. And this is where it's not compulsory, so some students miss it out, and it's a real shame because this is where they ask you for parental education. What they mean by this is have the student's parents, step-parents or guardians, have you been to university? Do you have any higher education qualifications? If you have, yes. If you haven't, no. They can answer don't know or prefer not to say. But if a student, especially if they are the first generation in their family to go to university, they can be entitled to a contextual offer, or they can be which can help them get a lower offer for the course that they are applying for. So it can be really, really helpful to put this in, and we really do, if people are happy to give that information, we would really encourage you to do so. Occupational background has to be filled in. You can type the job title, start typing the job title into here. Click on find. And it does give loads and loads of options. Really, just again, click on the thing that is the most similar to that describes a job of a parent. That it says there who earns the most, or the parent that the student lives with. When it's all finished, tick complete. If it's not finished, you'll see here you get these little green dots, which tells you that you started it but you haven't finished it. If the section is finished, you get a little red tick. So choices is where their university choices go. They click on add a choice, and then they just look for the university that they want to go to. One thing to be careful of is if you type in, if a city has more than one university, it will obviously bring up all of those when you type it in, so make sure you click on the right one. And the same with the course code. This is the course they want to do. It's all alphabetical. But for example, if you look at maths, there are lots of different maths degrees here. So make sure that they've researched carefully and that they have chosen the right one. If they are uncertain at all, please do check with school.
Laura, I'm just going to say, when you click on that, we just see, we can't see what you're seeing on that bit.
You can't see that? Oh, okay.
You can't see the options and the things. It will just be with the way your screen shares it.
Okay, let me try again. Sorry about that. I don't think I can make it. I think when it's bringing up different windows within UCAS, I don't think it's able to share it with you. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully you can see where I'm clicking on sort of see list and clicking on the little question marks, and that you do get a box there, and that it gives you the different options when it loads up. I think the only other important one here is the start date, which is either this year, if they're wanting to go to university, that would be next year, sorry, 2021, or there is the option there if they want to defer, then they can put in the year after, so starting in 2022. There is a little bit of wiggle room around that if they put one and then change to the other, but not very much. It is better to know that from the beginning, know if they are taking a gap year or not. Again, information on things like gap years is available from school. I know at the moment, obviously, things are really, really chaotic in terms of gap years. We don't know what the situation is like. We don't know what the situation is going to be like in a year's time. So I would recommend that students are putting to start in 2021, unless they're really certain of what they're going to do in a gap year, like they've got a really firm plan. Otherwise, go for 2021 for now. Education. This is where you put in your, well, two things. You put in your GCSEs, so everything, the previous school that you've been to, and any GCSEs or other qualifications that you did at that school. You also need to put in the date that you got them. And one important thing that you need for this, I just click on add here, is you must know the exam board of the GCSE that you are putting in. So when you're putting in your sort of biology GCSE, you need to know, which exam board that was with. That is on GCSE certificates. So if your children have their GCSE certificates, that's where they can find that information. If they can't find them or they don't know, please contact the school that they did their GCSEs at, because they will need that. They also need to put in any qualifications they're currently doing. So any A-levels that they're currently doing, or any BTECs that they're currently doing, or an EPQ, or anything that they are currently going to get any UCAS points for. This is slightly complicated because it's a swap. So each qualification they are doing needs to go under the school they attend. So you can see here in this example one, that this example student is doing a science BTEC at Acland Burghley, and they are doing an art A-level at Parliament Hill. So the school needs to be entered separately, and then the qualification under the school. Students have received all of the information how to do this step by step. There's a PowerPoint that goes through every single stage and that tells them what to do. So hopefully it should be quite straightforward. Again, if it is not, the best thing they can do is contact us and we can talk them through it. But like all the bits of UCAS, it's quite simple to click and find what they need and then fill in. The way we've set this up for Acland Burghley is we've actually put here, when they're in education, sorry, I'll just go back to this. When they click on add qualifications, we've actually added the qualifications that they might be doing underneath. But that might differ at different schools. If it does, and if you don't have any qualifications there, if they can't see anything, then they can just type in the search box and find what they need. As always, save at the bottom. And if they do anything wrong, it's quite easy to make a mistake on this, so put the wrong dates in and things like that. If they do make mistakes or they put in the wrong thing, then they can just edit or remove at the side there. Honestly, this is probably the section that takes the longest because it's the most fiddly. Having to put each GCSE in, having to put each A-level or each BTEC in. So this can be a little bit awkward to get right. And if they are doing a BTEC, then they will need a BTEC registration number, which will go in the bottom there. Again, someone at the school that they attend or the school they do the BTEC at will be able to give them that BTEC number. We're currently getting them from our exams officer. Don't worry about it at the minute because it's not essential, but you will need it by the time they fill in the UCAS form and send it off. Okay, that's all the sort of basic filling in sections. So the next section really is around the personal statement, and this links into the choices very strongly and what choices they've made that go in that section. So the personal statement, they only get one personal statement, which has to fit with all the courses they're applying for, all the unis they're applying for. So they need to really think carefully about what they're communicating. And in that way, it really helps if the courses they're applying for are quite similar. It won't really matter if they apply for history and sociology at one uni and just history at another uni, but if they're trying to apply for history and biology, they're going to find it really difficult to write a personal statement because it's very, very hard to tailor it to both of those courses. So their course choices should be as similar as possible. Thinking about course choices as well, the ones that they choose, the places they choose to go to, the courses that they choose are really important. And we'd really encourage them to be aspirational. So they should be looking at least one course that is at the top of the grades that they expect to get, 2 courses that are really secure, and 2 courses that are quite safe. So for example, if they're predicted 3Bs, we'd encourage them to apply for a course that is, for example, an A and 2Bs, or even 2 As and a B, a couple of courses that are on 2Bs, and a couple of courses that are 2Bs and a C. They can do the best place to do that research is through Unifrog, and all the SWAP students have a Unifrog login. If they don't know it, again, they should contact their head of year or someone at their school to find out how to log into Unifrog, because that way they can filter their courses to find out what the entry requirements are, and they can do all that in one easy place rather than having to go to every single university page to look it up. So the personal statement, it goes in here. It doesn't really look like much. They shouldn't be typing it straight in here. It should be done in Word, partly because it times out within 35 minutes, and so they might lose their work. It will take longer than 35 minutes to write a personal statement. But secondly, because it will be looked at by their tutor. We never send off a first draft of a personal statement. It's always something that is drafted, looked at, checked, suggestions are made, advice is given, and they redraft that personal statement in order to make it as good as possible. And it's only when they are happy with it that they can copy and paste it into this box. There is a maximum, there is a limit on it. It's a character limit, 4,000 characters. That works out at about a page in size 12 font. So that's the kind of length that they are looking at for a personal statement. A couple of things to remember about a personal statement. One is that it is an academic document. So it should be at least 80% about their academic achievements. So really pushing on focus on the subject that's the closest to what they want to do at uni, but obviously talk about what they've learned from their other subjects, and really push favorite modules, favorite pieces of work, extra reading they've done. Any academic achievement at all should go in that personal statement. That's primarily what the universities want to see. It should have it should be as specific as possible, really tailored to, as I say, the subject that they want to study, using lots of examples of things that they've done. And it's really important that they are able to discuss things that they have learned or experienced outside the classroom. So it shouldn't just be, I had to do this because my teacher told me to. It should be because I really love this subject or I'm really interested in it. I also went and did this reading or explored this. There should be a sense of how much they really want to take that study further in that personal statement. They can talk about extracurricular things, so things like sports or other kinds of experience or things that they've got, but that should always come secondary to the academic aspects. That is really what the unis want to see. And when they are talking about things like sports teams or volunteering or work experience, it should be relevant things. So things that they've done in the past couple of years rather than stuff that's quite old. They need to keep it, again, relevant to the course and focus on skills. Don't worry about remembering all this or relaying it all to them, because this is something that we, the tutor teams, are going to be doing over the next few weeks and the next few months. We're all going to be working together to make sure that these statements are as good as possible, which is to give you a sense of what those statements should be like and how they should be structured. It is, as I say, an academic statement. checked carefully, of course, proofread, all those kind of things, which we will help with. So when that's all done, everything's filled in, and there should be little red ticks down the whole side. View all details is just a summary. And then finally, I can't click on it yet, but finally, you will be able to select pay and send at the end. Pay and send, you need a debit or a credit card to pay and send. As I say, it's £25, the UCAS flat fee. Just to really push this, when a student presses pay and send, it doesn't go to UCAS, it comes to us, or it goes to whoever the UCAS coordinator is at that student's school. That means that we can do a final check of everything in this form. So we, in this view all details, we will go through it, we will check that everything is filled in. We will check that there is nothing missing. And if there are things that are missing, so for example here, if there are things that are missing, we can return that form to the student and ask them to fill it in. Likewise, if we see any errors in the personal statement at this stage, we will send it back to the student and ask them to fill it in. But really, that by this point, the personal statement should be something that's been done with the tutor. We are here to do a final once over and make sure that it all makes sense and that the application form is all okay. They should be certain that their application form is correct by the time they press pay and send, but it isn't the be all and end all. It's not, as I say, it doesn't go straight to UCAS then. It does come to us as like a final little buffer. So students can start writing their personal statements now. And once they've started thinking about what courses they want to do, they should be starting to put that together. And they'll be getting resources from us starting this week and going over the next few weeks on how to do those personal statements. The first port of call for help with the personal statement is the tutor. They will be there to accept drafts and help out. But if there are any other questions or if there's anything a tutor can't answer, then as I say, of course, I am here to give them a hand. Another word of warning before I move on about personal statements is just, I suppose just the final thing is about plagiarism. This is something we get asked about every year. There are lots of websites around who will make really huge, amazing claims that for sometimes quite a lot of money, they will write personal statements. Please do not take advantage of them. Most of the time they are copy and paste, and UCAS have really sophisticated software that checks for plagiarism, very similar to what's used at universities to run sort of undergrad work and dissertations. I've seen it work, and it is really impressive that it will just pull up and highlight anything that is they can find elsewhere on the internet, or anything that's been submitted by another student. So if they copy someone else's personal statement, that also flags. And UCAS will then send that information directly to the university. So it's really not worth it. I'm sure it's not something that's crossing anyone's mind, but sometimes if students panic or they're not confident or they're unsure, sometimes they can decide to look at those sort of websites that do these things. Please discourage them. We are here to help if they need help with a personal statement, not random people on the internet. So I think that's it for the UCAS form. That is, as I say, the whole thing. I haven't gone into everything in lots of detail because it is quite long, it's quite involved. And we have produced a PowerPoint that is a step-by-step guide, as I say, for students for filling this in. But I think I've mentioned all the ones that for you are the most important, or the ones that we tend to get the most questions about. The last couple of things before I have a look at some questions, me and Miss Remington and Miss Stokes look at some questions, are first of all just about early entry. So about Oxford and Cambridge. As I said at the beginning, the deadlines for Oxford, Cambridge, medicine, dentistry, veterinary are early. That's the 15th of October. They're the only courses that have early entry. Things like biochemistry, biomed, pharmacy are all the normal deadline. It's just those few. So those students really need to let us know that they are wanting to apply for early entry, because those personal statements need to be done first, because they are sent off so much earlier than any of the others. The statements also have to be quite specific to apply to those places. We've got lots of experienced members of staff who can help. Those unis as well, not only those unis, but those courses, nearly all of them will have their own admissions tests. So students need to be prepared for that. Medicine have two. Students do a different one depending on which university they're applying for. And the Oxford and Cambridge have either usually their own admissions test, or sometimes they will ask for work to be sent in advance. But again, it depends on the subject that's been applied for. And these tend to be the only courses that have interviews as well. Most unis don't interview unless it's for a really vocational course, as I say, like something like medicine or midwifery or education, or if a student is applying for art foundation or an art or media course where they need a portfolio. In those cases, they should expect to be asked to come for interview, but for most of the courses, they won't get one. They'll either get an acceptance or not, which is both fortunate and unfortunate in some ways. If a student is applying for a course where they have to do an interview or they have to do an admissions test, again, there will be more support from us for those. There's lots of information and lots of stuff available to support them and help them out. They will never be sent into those blind. Please let us know, though, if they are applying. Speaking of offers, acceptance, things like that, it's way off in the future now, but for the non-early entry courses, so the courses that have the deadline of the 15th of January, the unis then have until the end of March to get back to students. So they shouldn't expect to get all of their responses as soon as they send their form off. However, experience tells us that the earlier you send your form, the earlier you get the responses, because in sort of November and December, the admissions departments are less busy. They tend to reply a bit quicker. When it gets to January, they are snowed under, especially around the deadline. So it takes them longer to get through the applications. So if they're keen to get their responses and their offers early, get your form off early. The students don't need to reply to those offers until the start of May. So they've got ages to consider this, to go to open days, to do sample courses, to check and check and check again, and make sure that when they do accept, they are accepting the right course. Obviously, we don't know what the situation is around things like open days at the minute. At the moment, they're not running because campuses aren't open to most people, but there are lots of digital events and digital open days that students can be attending to get a sense of the course and the uni that they intend to apply for. When they do accept their offers, they only get to accept 2 out of the 5. One becomes their firm choice, where they definitely want to go. One becomes their backup or insurance choice. Again, when it comes to that time, this is quite far in the future, but we will do everything we can to support with that, to help them make that decision, help them make the right choice later down the line. Okay, I think I've finished for the moment. Anna, is there anything you want to add?
I don't think there is. I was just had one question on the chat that I was going to respond to because I couldn't type fast enough. And I was just also going to put up, you might want to put it in the chat actually, Laura,
Yeah.
our emails, because if there are specific questions, so Burghley students and parents, if you've got any follow-up questions about the UCAS process, then please email either Laura or me or Ron, and it's Laura will put, if you put your email address up, Laura, with all the Acland Burghley stuff, and then ours are the same, first initial and surname, so the format's the same. The question that I was going to ask, respond to from the chat was, somebody just asked, what if the predicted grades you get aren't what you, the predicted grades that are given on your UCAS form aren't what you get in the end. I wonder if you just want to say something about that. I mean, I can respond, but
Yeah.
you might carry on.
So predicted grades on the UCAS form are they're decided by teachers based on all the work. It's never done on something like one mock exam and that's your predicted grade. It's based on all the work that they do throughout sixth form and what the teacher thinks is the best grade that that student will get, really. And offers are made by the uni based on those grades. If the student doesn't get them, so most commonly it's because they don't do as well as they're predicted. In that case, that's why we actually suggest that's why they have some aspirational courses and some safe courses. So hopefully in that case, their insurance choice will match the grades that they get. If it doesn't, it really isn't a big issue. What will happen is that student will go into something called clearing. And although it's got, people hear clearing and they think, oh no, it's terrible, it's awful. It's not at all. Clearing is just a list of all the courses that aren't full. So it's every course that's available on results day that isn't yet full. And if a student doesn't meet meets the requirements of their offer, they'll be automatically placed in clearing. And then they say they want to do a psychology degree, they can search clearing, they can find all the psychology degrees that aren't yet full, and then they can email that uni and that course. It will automatically send through their grades because it's all done via UCAS, and then the uni can say yes or no. Same thing if they want to, say they really desperately want to go to Royal Holloway University, they could look at all the courses that are still available at that particular university, and again, they can automatically email the admissions departments from there. They can also phone them up if they prefer, but a lot of it has gone online now. The other way around, there is something as well called adjustment, which can happen if a student gets actually slightly better grades than they expected. And that kind of works the other way around. It works very, very similar to clearing, but for looking at courses that are of a higher level than that student was predicted. That's nowhere near as common, but there is space in UCAS for that, just in case it happens. There's also a system in UCAS where, for example, if you apply for 5 courses and you don't get any of them, so for whatever reason, if the student has maybe applied for things that were really way too high, then there is something within UCAS called UCAS Extra. That means that they can, if they don't get any offers, they can then start applying for more courses. But all of that comes quite a bit later on into year 13.
The other one I was going to say, Laura, was you just had a question about Oxbridge and whether
Yes.
Oxbridge applications. Yeah, the question was whether it takes up one of your 5. So yes, it does. So if you're applying for Oxford or Cambridge,
Yep.
So in other words, you're in the early entry group, which is the 15th of October. That means that your whole UCAS application has to be done by the 15th of October. So you'll put the specific college that you're going to apply for if it's Oxford or Cambridge, but then you'll also have your 4 other choices. So you sort of need to get cracking quicker. And I just put in the chat, it's really useful if you are considering early entry to have got us a draft that at least we can start working with you on before the end of term, even if it's really a kind of skeleton draft, because we can give you some advice for things to do over the summer. The Oxbridge personal statements are much more like academic essays as opposed to the kind of generic structure of the UCAS statement. Yeah. Anything you want to add on that one, Laura?
Just exactly that it is a slightly different approach to writing a personal statement. We are in the process of putting together, so I've been contacting some students who've expressed an interest in early entry today. I've emailed them and asked them to sort of come back to me and tell me what their subject is that they're interested in. I know other LaSwap schools are doing the same, and myself and Maya Ogunlabi are looking at putting together a group across LaSwap who are looking at early entry. So we are going to be doing some work with those students, but I really can't emphasize enough, if your child is considering Oxford, Cambridge or medicine, they must let their school know sooner rather than later. If they leave it until after summer, it will be really, really difficult for them to get their statement done and get their application done to a high enough standard by then. So please get in touch with the school now so we can put that help in place.
The only other one I was going to come up, because I think on the chat I might have put it into just one to reply to one person by mistake, was just about Art Foundation.
Yes.
The question was just about whether Art Foundation runs through the same system. So it doesn't, and the deadlines are because of institution specific. So they tend to be sort of end of January or start of February. Of 2021 for Art Foundation. And the other question for Art Foundation was whether you do a UCAS application as well as an Art Foundation. Well, we always have some students who do,
Yep.
And then we'll have, because there's lots of students who do art at Burghley, and then we have a group of students who don't know they're definitely committed to Art Foundation, and they only do an Art Foundation application, which sits slightly outside the UCAS deadlines and structures, and art teachers work with them on their personal statements, because they have to put together a portfolio and so on.
Yep.
Sorry, Laura. Yeah, go on.
No, that's thank you for that. I should have mentioned Art Foundation. Absolutely, all of that. There have been some really good uni-led digital events on putting portfolios together that have been coming out. I've been putting those in the family bulletin when I've seen them, and also sending them to art teachers. So if you have children who are thinking of doing Art Foundation or any sort of art and media type degree, please do keep an eye out for those, because again, the earlier they can start putting their portfolio together, the better, because it can be quite stressful to do it all in one go. The only other thing I didn't mention is, because we usually have very small numbers, but if there are any students who are doing performing arts type degrees, who a lot of the time they will be asked to do an audition. And some of those, a very, very small number, fall outside of UCAS. They come under UCAS conservatoires. So things like RADA, that aren't universities as such, but are drama schools and things, again, have different deadlines and are in a different section of UCAS. If that applies to anyone, the absolute best person to speak to is the drama teacher at the school, the lead drama teacher at the school, and they will be able to advise. We only have usually 1 or 2 students a year, but again, the deadline for conservatoires is earlier than the main UCAS deadline. So if you think that applies to you, please speak to your drama teacher. Hello, Ron.
Hiya. Hello, everyone. Laura, you want to answer me? Can I be heard? Because I'm not sure about it. All right, smashing. Hello, everyone. Great that so many of you have joined. This has been fantastic. I'm sure you'll all agree. I think at the beginning of Laura's talk, I'm sure someone may have asked the question about the UCAS booklets, the LeSwap UCAS booklets. They were sent home to parents and students by the LeSwap office with a letter. And I've got a copy. If anyone wants it sent on to them, if they email me, I can send it to you. But what I wanted to add to that, for the last 3 weeks, we've been sending home Laura's PowerPoints on how to do the first 2-3 sections up until the personal statement. So we've chose to do it that way because Laura's ones are just so fantastic. They're also much more succinct. So if the students just follow the PowerPoints that we've been sending home, this week's one in particular is the one that they should be using, because there's a couple of additional slides that Laura put in. And then from next week onward, if I've understood the timeline correctly, we'll be doing the personal statement. So they just have to work through Laura's PowerPoints.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right, Ron. And if anyone if anyone feels that their child hasn't got that PowerPoint for whatever reason, so if we've had a wrong email address or it hasn't come through, or if you would like a copy yourself, please just email me and I'll send it to you.
Perfect. I think that probably draws everything to a close, doesn't it?
I'm just going to send email addresses again. I've popped them in the chat, but let me just send them again.
And I'm popping off to another meeting, so I'm going to say that just a remander, just if you do encourage your Year 12s to send us any drafts, we'd be delighted to see them. I've seen a few, not many yet, but it's actually a really good time to send them to us, and just get some advice on how they can work on them over the summer. And then the earlier you send them to us, the more time that we get to actually spend on them is the brutal
Yes.
truth.
Just to answer a question that's just come up in the chat, the PowerPoint is tailored to Acland Burghley students because I wrote it with Acland Burghley students in mind. But honestly, 99% of it is applicable to anyone doing a UCAS application. The only thing that won't be is the buzzword. So the buzzword is Burghley, on there is Burghley only, but everything else, sort of how to fill everything in, will apply to everybody from the swap. So it will be able to be used by anyone. Just contact the school to get the particular buzzword, or otherwise you'll see the wrong list of tutors and things like that when they try to log in. So they'll need to make sure it's the right one. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. As I say, if you've got any further questions, please do email. Please don't think that anything you're asking is too small or silly or anything like that. I'm really aware that this is not a process that is easy or familiar for so many people. And it's also, there are bits of it that are fiddly and awkward. Please just get in touch. We are here to help you out. Thank you very much.